Welcome back, Conservancy kids. I'm here with my friend Taylor again in Sierra Vista, Arizona, and today we are talking about keystone species. Taylor, what is a keystone species?
That's a great question, Nicole. Keystone species are a single species that scientists can look at to get a check on the health of an entire habitat. That means that one species, whether it's a plant or an animal, depending on how well that animal or plant is doing, can show if the rest of the habitat is doing okay or not.
Nice. So what are some examples of keystone species here where we are in the Chihuahuan Desert?
Yeah, so here in the Chihuahuan Desert, we have an animal native to the area. A lot of you will be familiar with it. It's the prairie dog. And we don't think about prairie dogs too much there, but they're super cool rodents. They're small to medium size, certainly larger than a rat, but smaller than a lot of other things. And prairie dogs make burrows underground. So they make these big burrows, they go underground, they make these big, huge tunnel systems that connect and reconnect. Back in the day when the West was first farmed by Americans, they found some of those prairie dog towns, is what they're called, were anywhere from several acres to hundreds of miles in size. And so these prairie dog towns, why they're important is because, first off, the burrows are used by so many different kinds of animals. Mm-hmm. They're used by snakes, other rodents, other reptiles, lots of insects, and even bird species, particularly the burrowing owl. It's been shown that despite their name, burrowing owls don't burrow at all themselves, but they do live in burrows. And predominantly they live in the burrows created by prairie dogs. So burrowing owls rely on prairie dog towns for their populations to continue existing. Then you have the prairie dogs eating grasses and seeds and passing their waste in their burrows in latrines. And all of that becomes or is food for other animals. So they collect all this stuff in one location, whether it's stored food or a latrine, where then insects or other animals will come find the leftovers or sneak in and grab some food before the prairie dogs get a chance to eat some. And then finally, of course, prairie dogs are a great food source for lots of other animals. So think of different predators like coyotes or foxes or even snakes that go into the burrows themselves.
So these prairie dogs are basically creating their own habitat for other animals inside these burrows.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gosh, that's so cool. So a lot of our viewers live in the Phoenix area. What is an example of a keystone species that they might find up there?
Yeah, so in the Phoenix area, you're going to see something all over town, all over the deserts. It's the saguaro cactus. So I'm sure you're familiar with it. It's iconic. It's known worldwide. They're big, beautiful, incredible species. And saguaro cactuses take a long time to grow. 75, 80 years old before they even start growing one of those arms. Mm-hmm. And through their entire lifetime, they're producing and providing so much for other animals to eat. So, or do other things with. So to start, we've seen those big, amazing cactus flowers at the top of the saguaro. When they're flowers, they're providing nectar to lots of animals and insects, birds, bats, moths, anything you could think of that might be a pollinator is going in there to get that nectar. And that nectar, it's high nutrients, it's a water-based substance, so it's helping hydrate things too. And then after those are pollinated, they become fruit. And those are eaten by tons of animals as well. Most of the time on top, they're eaten by different bird species. If they fall off, then lots of other animals will snack on them on the ground. But then, of course, saguaros are a huge habitat source for lots of animals. So you'll get different hawk species building nests on saguaros that kind of use it very similarly to a tree. They'll build these big, amazing nests and have their babies on them, and they're really safe because of all those cactus spines going up and down that cactus. But then you'll get birds, particularly starting with the Gila woodpecker, will create holes into the cactus itself that you may have seen turn into a scarified tissue inside the cactus. And a lot of times those are called boots. So this scarred tissue inside the cactus becomes a nesting cavity for the woodpeckers, but then in the future those can be used by many, many other species of bird.
That's awesome. So this saguaro, again, up in the Sonoran Desert, is creating its own habitat that touches a number of other species, both as a place for shelter that's very protected, as Taylor was saying, with those spines, but also as a food source, and a food source that is very water-based and hydrating, which is incredibly important in such a dry and hot area. And these fruits have fallen over the past summer, which is the hottest part of the year when there's the least amount of water. It's usually right before monsoon season. And so this is a time when other animals are desperate for a juicy snack. So saguaros are really, really important. And now I just wanted to point out that when we say keystone species, that doesn't mean they're the only important species in an ecosystem. We've talked about the interconnectedness of ecosystems many times over Conservancy, kids, and how each species plays an important role wherever it lives. But as Taylor was saying, we can use these keystone species to keep an eye on the overall health of the environment, and then if we notice something isn't quite right, we can work to correct it, and that ultimately will help all species in the environment. This was really awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Taylor.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Conservancy kids. We'll see you next time.